sure you remember your husband's name. But yeah, I know, but I'm a bit worried because I didn't see him. Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much. You have to be very kind and mean it. Thank you. I know you worry about this a lot. Please pray for us, but we're doing good. I'll take care of this with my husband. You see how broken record I can become? And that's a setting of boundaries. Setting of boundaries. It's going to take a bit of time and energy from your end, but that's the way you have to set boundaries. Mom, don't worry about this. If your mom or your parent, your dad, is one of those in-laws that call you 5-6 times a day, what do you do? And that upsets your spouse.
Block the number.
Block the number. Abouna, Maurice, Ibrahim. It's being recorded. Suggested. I want to hear from you.
Don't answer all the time.
Yeah, you may not have to answer all the time. What else?
Maybe tell the parent, don't call 5 times enough. Twice.
Who should tell?
The child.
The
of
child.
parent,
Yes.
not the spouse.
No. But then the spouse needs to support the child to tell his or her parents. Support by encouragement, not by disappointment. We have our ways of telling our spouses we're disappointed. We're not happy, as if they have control over their parents. They don't. You have control over no one except by struggling yourself. Other thoughts on boundaries with the in-laws? Any other thoughts? You can share some of what worked with you.
What happens if the two families, they don't like each other?
Yeah. No, the two in-laws? Yeah.
So that's effect on any relationship. So what we can do in order to make it happen, make it work.
You should minimize the times when all of them come together. Because that could be a recipe for disaster. And it could ruin your get-together, or it will happen here and then, but you should not encourage it. Because you're not in control. I wish that everyone would love one another. And I think that's what we call people to do. And that's what God calls us to do, and yet we stand against God. Right? And He respects our free will. So again, you're not in control of a lot of things, so you don't want to put these explosive components together and end up with something much bigger. So you minimize, but at the same time, you care for that side, and your spouse cares for that side, and now and then you crisscross. Now, here is the thing. Sometimes people just become fixated on, I'm not going to talk to my in-laws. They disrespected me, I'm not going to talk to them. I want to invite you to rethink that. This is not our Christian attitude. Okay? You don't have to be buddy-buddy with them, but you could now and then say, hi, uncle, how you doing? Just checking on you. And that's it. See, the problem isn't them here. The problem is really me. I'm not able to set a comfortable boundary where I can just say that but not say all this. So I want to encourage you to self-examine and reflect. The majority of the issues we think are issues in other people, they're actually issues in me. I'm not aware how to manage this. I don't have the courage, and I don't have the courage to do this. I'm afraid of. So there is something here to be done. A lot of things here to be done that can help you setting the boundaries. The boundaries is a two-way boundary. It's not just telling someone you're out. No, it's understanding where you are and where you stop. Okay? So again, trying to change your spouse's relationship with their parents, don't go there. But you can decide as a family now, this is what's going to be for both of you. Other thoughts on how to set boundaries? Anything else you want to ask or share? Sometimes the couple needs advice. The couple requires an advice. They need to sit down with a third party, the priest or a counselor, because sometimes we have not, the spouse, you or the spouse, have not differentiated properly from their parents. They're still very attached in an unhealthy way to their parents. So it's good for that person, not just for their spouse, it's good for that person to learn how to differentiate, but that requires work. Requires work. That's why I said, speak to a counselor, or speak to a priest, or I know that in the diocese here there are people who have taken the marriage and family course, program. It's called
Family ministry program.
Family Ministry Program, yes. Any other thoughts on this? Okay, next one. How to make my spouse gain trust in me and my family. Okay, general question, general answer. Number one, you have to speak to your spouse about this. So for the person who sent the question, or the people who sent the question, say, talk to your spouse. So I want you to gain more trust in me. It is very important for me that you trust me more. And the spouse says, what do you mean by that? Explore. Explore the issue in your couple's relationship. Explore it. And then find out, what does that trust look like? What do you mean by trusting more? How do you know that I'm trusting less? How do you know that I'm trusting more? Define these things. Don't assume your own definition. Listen to your spouse as well, and let your spouse listen to you. What does it mean to trust more? And your family, I'm assuming you mean your parents. And why does your spouse need to trust your family? What do you mean by that? So a general answer to this, you need to have a conversation with your spouse, because my answer to this trust question could be different than what your spouse is asking. So there has to be some conversation. What does that look like? Generally speaking, your spouse wants to feel and know that you are his or hers and not anybody else, that you prioritize them before anybody else. So ask, what makes it clear to you that you are number one? Because when that happens, trust happens. Also, when the spouse is vulnerable, when you're vulnerable, when you open up to your spouse about something, think of dancing. Now you've danced. I'm sure you know how to dance. Let's say you're dancing, but you've seen dancing. People synchronize in dancing, or they step on each other's toes. And if you're dancing is the relationship. Imagine dancing all the time, stepping on each other's toes. How much do you trust dancing with your partner? You want to say, oh, I'm tired. Can I just, can we watch? Can we watch? Can we watch mean, can we stop the relationship? That's what it means. That's the analogy. So you want to know, what is stepping on each other's toes? What is it that I'm doing that's pushing your button? Do you realize that all of us here have buttons? Do you know how to know if you pushed your spouse's button? How do you know? You know. You know. Let me tell you a general rule. Whenever someone goes from 0 to 100 in 3 seconds or less, you've pushed their button. Okay? So but we don't realize it. We say, we continue on pushing each other's buttons. Whenever you see your spouse go from 0 to 100, stop and say, okay, I think I may have done something that upset you right now. What's going on? If you're able to just do that, which I think you're able, if you train yourself to do that, that's going to explore what's going on with your spouse. So, gaining trust, again, this part is when you open up. If your spouse, when your spouse opens up and you respond favorably, You support them, you listen to them, you don't put them down, you give them space to be whatever and whoever they are right now. That helps them trust you. Did you get that? So when someone becomes vulnerable, they open up and they tell you something that isn't easy to say, and you actually hold them there and support them and listen to them and don't try to fix them, that helps them trust you. Lots of questions. Media, culture, and friends have influenced spouses' perception about intimate relationships to the point that we as Christians almost forgot what is God's perception of intimacy. Please explain. Okay. General question. Intimacy. I'm not sure if the person here refers to sexual intimacy or intimacy in general. So I'll try and answer both. Intimacy in general is about feeling, again, close and yourself. You can be yourself with your spouse. Not worrying about, your self-image in the eyes of your spouse, how he or she is thinking of you because you opened up on something. So you feel close. You feel you could be whoever you want to be, whoever you are actually with your spouse. That brings intimacy. Understanding each other. Knowing what's going on with one another without mind reading and all that, but understanding. There's an understanding what's going on. That brings about intimacy. Now, sexual intimacy is an essential and an important part in marriage. It's important. Now, how many of you talk about sexual expectations? So as you're eating dinner, hey, I want to talk to you about, my sexual expectations. Or, how I feel about, our physical relationship or sexual relationship. There's someone who calls an author who calls sexual intimacy the Holy of Holies in marriage. The Holy of Holies in marriage. Obviously, sexual intimacy or sexual interaction is God's idea for marriage. In marriage, it's no one else's idea. It's a blessed thing in marriage. The world has tinted our minds to think of it as, something we don't talk about, something, even kids, ask little kids, what do you know about sex? Some people will say it's the dirty thing parents do under the cover. No, seriously, ask your children if you can. If you can. Which you should. At one point, you should be ahead of the school. When you talk about sexual education, you should be ahead of the school if you have children. But how comfortable are you to speak about these things will also translate to how comfortable your children will come to you and ask you, versus asking someone else who's very comfortable in the playground telling them all the wrong stuff about it. So again, this conversation, how men interpret acceptance when they initiate the relationship, and how wives respond to that. And the common saying that sex for women starts where? In the kitchen. Meaning what? Help me in the kitchen. I want to feel that you're close to me, that you understand me, that you've listened to my feelings, that we're connected well, we're actually, you're there for me. Then the physical connection can happen. Versus men, they could be having a fight all day with their wives, and when the light is turned off, immediate mode, I can now move from this to that. Because men, if you haven't seen this YouTube, you have to. The men's brain. As men, we move from compartment to another. And the compartments do not touch. I just fought with you, but now I'm not fighting with you. I'm attracted to you. Women, they don't have compartments, they have wires. And everything is touching everything. Okay? So if the kitchen stuff wasn't going well and the talking with me wasn't going well, then nothing else will go well. Right? So definitely we have to understand the Christian yes.
After you finish it, please.
Yeah, the Christian understanding in sexuality is that we each give one another, we each give ourselves to the other. It's a gift. The sexuality is a gift. People give to one another. Is it a duty? Is it something that we have to do? Of course not. It is something that we do out of love and connection. And people do become vulnerable to each other, and they give themselves to one another in the context of marriage, of course. So, wives, they feel violated. They feel violated when they have so much trouble with their husbands, and yet their husbands are still demanding to have sexual relationship. It's very difficult on a woman who doesn't feel the actual day-to-day connection with her husband, and let's say the relationship is not going well at all, and yet the husband always demands the physical relationship. At the same time, when a wife refuses her husband sexually, that gets things even worse and worse and worse, because then he feels rejected, he's not good enough for her, and so on. And so they say the three top problems in North Americans' marriage, or North American couples relationship, is sex, money, time. Time. The Christian way is to sacrifice, is to give, is to make the other person feels wanted and accepted and desired and valued, right? Sometimes you hear that some wives are very rigid when it comes to stuff like that. No, I'm tired. No, I'm this. And repeatedly. Now, I don't know what's going on there, because there could be, to explore what's going on there, could be fear of things, or who knows. But we need to explore that. And so in a proper setting, with the proper person, whether it be a Christian counselor or a priest, some of these things need to be explored, and not, like I said to you, a lot of the things we need to speak about, we actually don't. And they create what? Gaps between us. Yeah.
And follow up, Abouna, for the area of sexual intimacy. It is very interesting that as a church, and for the most part, not only Orthodox Church, but perhaps even the Christian Church, I have not found prayer before sexual intercourse for me. And then I've had a prayer before eating, Salah Abdul Akl, and we really are very adamant about doing that and teaching that. It is important to have prayer prior to sexual intercourse. And it needs also, because this is not perhaps something that we've heard of before, it needs Zay al-Agbeya, that we have written prayers to guide us. I think a prayer before sexual intercourse which has the goal set by God and would be important. And until that prayer is developed, I think it's important for couples to pray prior, during and after sexual intercourse.
It's very interesting to hear a comment like that. I think it's a very good suggestion to have a prayer between anything that we do, before anything we do, and between us whenever we do anything. So when St. Paul said pray without ceasing, he's saying to pray all the time. And to have a prayer that prepares both of us to a holy encounter, that's great, it's wonderful. And to protect the relationship from thoughts and ideologies that are of the world when it comes to sexual relationship is very important. To treat one another as a holy vessel of God, even though you are reacting as a human being with your desires and all that, but to make it something holy, not something dirty.
And that is what St. Paul wrote in his epistle. And as we know, that through prayer everything is sanctified. Yeah. Not that this relationship is sanctified through the sacrament. Eating is sanctified, but however we pray. And I think it's important just to develop that and talk about it in these programs and premarital or postmarital. This prayer, it's important, I feel.
It's a good suggestion. I think it's a suggestion that, again, because this is not an area that the church has been accustomed to speak of, even though there is a very nice book outside by St. John Chrysostom you should pick it up and read it. And he was open about speaking on that. If anybody, I think he should have probably, and he might have, I don't know, written some sort of a prayer. But regardless, whether it's a formal prayer or a personal prayer, as you enter into the relationship, it doesn't have to be always something written, but to lift up your heart before you are together, that's a blessing, that's a great blessing. And to protect the relationship from the corruption that exists in the world. It is very important.
I'll write it down.
One suggestion that I do have some information that I could actually answer questions. But I don't. 6 months of priesthood doesn't really prepare you for half of these questions. But
They're not asking about priesthood, they're asking about marriage.
11 years of marriage. Okay, no, it's okay. I'll pick easy ones. It's okay. This is the beauty. It's free choice. I can pick whatever question. So I just need to find one that's really easy.
I have it, and I refuse to play it.
Okay, so I'm just kind of skimming through a lot of these things, and it seems like we could categorize a lot of it on some of the comments that we've received. So there's definitely a lot around boundaries, and there's definitely a lot about intimacy.
Lots of questions on the in-laws.
I did a show on it. I thought that was enough. Where do you draw the line with extended family when it comes to the difference between being nosy and being concerned? Will it be blamed on culture again? I think Abouna said it best, and the only thing I could add, like, with boundaries specifically, what I've seen is that people don't know what the boundary is. So a lot of times they assume that there's no boundary. They assume that the boundary is different. And a lot of times, politely and gently and kindly, we need to express that this is the boundary. Sometimes, like Abouna said, sometimes we interpret that they know the boundary and they're crossing over the boundary and they're doing it to upset me, and how could they? And they come all these conclusions, but maybe themselves, they don't know what the boundary is. So again, gently, kindly say, look, this is the boundary. We had a lot of discussions, I had a lot of discussion with married people around the in-laws staying with them. And the culture comment here came in, especially when we were dealing with Egyptians, having the in-laws over for a long period of time. I remember one wife said to me, no, Abouna, I can't tell them not to stay with us, haram, or I can't tell them that this is like unheard of to tell them, you can't stay 6 months of the year with us. And I said, so you're willing to commit to 6 months living with your mother-in-law for a long time? She said, no, Abouna, I can't. So I'm like, why did you pick 6 months? And I heard the funniest answer, well, the visa is 6 months. So you're governing your marital life based on an American policy. So if the American policy changes to a year, you're stuck with your wife or your in-laws for a year. They change the American policy to 3 months, it's 3 months. No? I think as a spouse, you need to see the things that will upset your marriage ahead. It doesn't have to happen every single year. I've seen people be like, yeah, it's my mother-in-law again, and she's coming again, and she's going to stay for 6 months again, and we're having the same problems again. That's the definition of insanity, that you're doing the same thing and expecting a different result. No, that's khalas. Be brave enough to talk openly, the husband and the wife, and come to a conclusion, agreement, that for either side of the in-laws, we will only permit this period of time.
That's the visa.
I'm not, I think I've talked about it in the CYC show, Grapevine, about boundaries, and I've talked about it very openly. I don't perceive a healthy marriage when you are sharing your life with your in-laws. That goes against the Bible. If God wanted to say, oh, do not cling to your wife, take your mother with you, he would have said, take your mother with you. He didn't say, take your mother with you. And for a reason. And I'm encouraging the parents of adults to tell them, no, Habibi, I will not come over for 3 months. Even if you want me. I'm only going to come for, let's say, a few days, and that's it. Now, that's advanced marriage retreat. To get the parents to educate their kids on what is a healthy boundary. No, you have to lead a separate life. Okay, so I hope that covers the topic of boundaries.
I just want to highlight again what Abouna is saying this. We have to respect our parents. We have to show them love, and that does not go against boundary setting. You see how the two can actually happen in parallel. Now, expectations or unrealistic expectations are a different thing. So if the parents expect that in order for us to be good, I have to see you or talk to you, or I have to see you every day, or I have to be, every Monday, you guys always have to come because your other brother brings his wife and comes every Monday. No, you don't have to. This is rigid. Rigidity is not good. Okay? Rigidity in relationships usually produces trouble. But flexibility is good, but you've got to remain respectful of the parents.
Thoughts about spouses having friends of the opposite sex? I think it really depends on a lot of factors, but again, this is a general, it's not even a question, it's a comment. What are my thoughts about it? I think in today's world, we really have to take our marriage very serious. We have to protect our marriage. Today's retreat and all the issues that came up should highlight how much effort we need to spend to take care of our marriage. And that's just dealing with the other person, not dealing with the outside factors. So if you really truly highlight how important marriage is, and then hopefully how important parenting is, and how important our salvation is, I don't know how you can have time to do all these things and still have other factors that are affecting that. And here, having friends is normal. It's a social thing. But having one-on-one friends of the opposite sex, that's not normal, especially after marriage. So having a couple friends with another couple, that's healthy, that's fine. But having a husband, having a friend of the opposite sex, you're just adding another factor that you have to deal with. And I think one of the things that I've learned in this retreat so far is that there's a lot of communication barriers that we have to overcome. There's a lot of intimacy barriers that we have to overcome. There's a lot of misunderstandings and misinterpretation of what our strengths and growth and so forth. We haven't done all these things and gotten to a very healthy state to introduce another factor that may or may not add to our relationship. So my advice, and Abouna's expertise, my advice is, I think you should really focus on your marriage and make it a priority. And then have healthy friends as couples, as a social. You don't have to have that one-on-one. I don't know.
Absolutely no friends of the opposite sex once you're married. Can I be more blunt at this? And I'll say this, and this is not an Egyptian thing. I've had this with many Canadians, Christian Canadians. They say, my spouse and I have made a decision amongst ourselves that we're not going to ride a car with the opposite sex if we're going somewhere. We put boundaries. They agreed on a boundary. The idea here is, like I want to say, you can have a whole bunch of people as your friends, but once you're married, it is a back door that you never know when that could open, when there's trouble between the two of you. So I couldn't be more clear than saying, be careful. This is not something to have. But to have acquaintances and friends, colleagues that work here and there, that's fine. But someone you go and talk to over coffee because you're having a rough day, no. Absolutely. Can I'm very blunt when it comes to stuff that I know will affect the relationship in a very negative way very quickly. So there's no point of passing over that in any gentle way. My spouse does not have a budget or believe in having a budget. Is this okay? What's a budget? Leave it up to God. Well, you have to talk about this. I think in premarital counseling and now in postmarital, we speak about financial issues. And more importantly than the budget is the meaning of money to you and your spouse. Because that's what determines how you deal with it and how you make a budget or how you spend. And you know what? If I had to check, this was a full-blown postmarital. The exercise you have are only 2 exercises. We actually have exercises for all 9 areas that you've seen on the first page. But one of them is financial management, and then to talk about what is the meaning of money to you. Some people, money to them is for living. I use the money to live and to entertain myself, and they learn that in their own families, family of origin. Another person, no, you have to have money in the bank or else you're not safe, you're not secure. So money to them is safety and security. And so again, the difference in the meaning of money is important to talk about it, but you should have a budget, of course. You should have a budget, at least a general budget that is followed as closely as you can in terms of spending and all that. And I think this doesn't need to be an issue of conflict between the two of you, but you can sit down and maybe with the help of someone who deals with budgets and financial management stuff can put together, and you could actually download this online, financial budget, just how much you're paying insurance-wise, how much you're paying utilities and all that, and this is the amount of money that you have left, you're going to do this with it, or you're going to do that with it. So it is generally important to have a budget in your relationship. I would agree with that. So
Just said, you spend after save.
you could spend after you save some of it, it's okay. But they have to agree. So it all depends what you're trying to do this year and what you're trying to do this month. But I think generally to answer this question, it is good to have a budget, but it's more important also to have a discussion on what money means to you. And have a budget after that. What if my husband feels a sexual relationship is inappropriate and avoids it when I approach? So like I said earlier, unfortunately we don't talk about these things. So talk about what's inappropriate. And maybe it's something that precipitated within the husband due to a certain upbringing. It's very possible. I sometimes hear this actually more with women, not with men. That again, growing maybe in a different culture than the North American culture, some women get the idea that this is not something very good, and so on. But men, I guess, could also have that. So there needs to be an understanding of what's going on, and I would suggest you sit with Abouna locally and talk about this. So you're getting a spiritual advice from Abouna or from, like I said, someone who is a Christian counselor, and talk about this. There's more to the question, obviously, but I can't answer it. I can't answer more than that. Sometimes, you sit with someone and says, no, this is, it's not a good thing. Yeah, we have to do it, but it's not a good thing. And then we have to correct them theologically. Why this is actually this is God-made and not, it's not something that Satan thought of after God created us. Right? So we have to correct a little bit of the ideologies, but to explore them and understand them as a whole.
There's a couple here again. I think they still talk about boundaries, but how much influence should a mother-in-law have in the upbringing of a child? She's always making suggestions. Again, I think we've talked enough about mother-in-laws. I don't think. Again, like Abouna said, and like I said, we are asked to honor and respect our parents. We're asked to love them. We're asked to understand their approach. But at the the same time, that does not negate setting boundaries. From my humble opinion, the child has to understand that these are his parents or her parents. And these are the ones that are there and responsible for him or her and for their upbringing. The mother-in-law or the father-in-law may suggest many, many things to the parents. But I think the mistake happens is, again, if the boundary is not well defined and the mother-in-law or the father-in-law step over that and try to discipline or to upbring the child their own way, then the child gets confused. Am I listening to my parents? Or am I listening to my grandparents? What if my grandparents do something different than my parents? They'll always gravitate to whatever is better for them. Oh, I know Gittu is going to give me a piece of chocolate. Guess what? I love Gittu. But your Gittu, without knowing, I'm taking a hypothetical scenario here, is creating a division between the father or the mother that's saying no to chocolate and the child. And they're circumventing the system. So why? You know, God came on earth to unify us, and I think I've said this multiple times. He came on earth to unify us with God, to reconcile us with God, reconcile us with each other, and reconcile us with ourselves. Any form of division is not God's plan. It's a lot better that you take that advice from the parents with respect and honor and say, okay, we'll keep an open mind, active listening, understand their perception, honor them, respect them. Thank you for going out of your way to give us an advice. They could have said nothing. But at the same time, the parents are the ones that are responsible for that final decision. And the child is not confused. And the parents or the grandparents support whatever decision that comes out of the parents. Does that make sense? So that unification has to happen. But it requires lots of communication. It shouldn't be just, oh, whenever we go to our grandparents' house, we'll do whatever we want. Whenever they're coming over, we know that we're going to... No, we shouldn't have that division. Because the kids are the ones that unfortunately suffer all these changes and all these confusions.
I have a question. Sometimes when you approach parents or even parents-in-law about setting the boundaries or not staying over for a long time, their reaction is exaggerated. We're not loved so much, we're not coming, and it creates a problem. And sometimes they don't even talk to us because of that boundary that we're trying to set. What would you do about this reaction?
So I call it the Egyptian guilt.
Yeah.
You could call it whatever you want to call it, but I call it Egyptian guilt. Again, we all pray for wisdom with everybody. Dealing with people, even sometimes, as Abouna says, it's mechanical, but it's almost an art. You know, what works with someone might not work. Exactly. There are principles, sure, open communicate, but it's an art. So you have to win them over. And everyone has a way to win them over. You know, some people, you could win them over by just going and tabtab alayhum, or going to your mother-in-law and give her a hug, or saying something really sweet to her. You look very beautiful today. I can't wait till we spend time together. A person could melt in your hand by the way you are talking to them. Not trying to control them or be conniving or malicious, but win them over. Win them over with kindness, win them over with love, win them over with tahta amr, whatever you want. Still set the boundaries, and still be open, and still be honest, and still say, we would love for you to come over, but we actually have other plans. You don't have to go into details of all the plans, but just say. So it's a balance. How do you win the person over, and at the same time maintain the boundary? That's an art. I don't know if Abouna has mechanical suggestions of the mother-in-laws, but to me it's an art. How do I win the person over and make sure that they know that I love them and I respect them and I honor them, but at the same time I'm very decisive on this is what we have to do. I don't know, do you want to shed any?
I'm always focused on you as a couple, because you are the ones here, not your in-laws. If this was an in-laws retreat, Abouna and I would have different things to say. could tell them, like what I was saying, they also need some help and some guidance as to what to do. But that's not an in-laws retreat. But you will become in-laws one time, one day. Please remember this. But for you, I highly suggest that, one, do not take the place of defending your parents in front of your spouse. You don't need to. You don't need to. You don't, it's like, you know how sometimes we defend God in front of people? He doesn't need to. He doesn't, we're not his lawyers, right? You notice, for example, the Old Testament doesn't defend the existence of God. God is. There's no need to defend that. There's no need to be apologetic about that. I want to suggest that you embody the same thing. Don't feel the obligation to defend your parents. So if your spouse says, I'm upset at your mother because she did that, this and that, say, I get it. If I'm in your shoes, I'd probably feel a bit upset. You don't have to say, but she doesn't need to this. Don't bring it in between the two of you. Okay? There's no need. There's no need for that. Actually, it's more of you wanting to make sure your spouse and your parents are all, lovey-dovey and all that, and it doesn't have to be this way, in the sense that you don't have to defend. You can say a word of truth, but in love, but focus on the relationship between the two of you. That's essential. Abouna, please come sit with us, so that you can take some messages. Come. Yeah, so we have a message to finish.
5 minutes and then the parents back.
But again, you have to prioritize your relationship. And parents will learn very quickly that despite the fact that you told them, Aunt, Uncle, no sweets for so-and-so. I said, please, no sweets, no sweets. That you still love them, you still talk to them, and so on. So when they say, oh, but you don't love us, you don't care about us, whatever you were saying there, Dina, and you don't show this, you say, on the contrary, we love you very much. Be a broken record. Learn to be a broken record and speak with respect and love. And that's it. They'll learn. They'll learn to adapt. There's a question here for you.
He was like, he just took care of the kids. I should have been there.
I picked a nice question.
So it says, my spouse always tells me we need to pray and that will solve all our problems. But I think we actually need practical steps too. So I think both of them are right. I mean, there's no need to exclude prayer and there's no need to exclude practical steps. And I think this is what we're all doing now, right? Right now, we're getting the practical steps. But also when we go home, we need to pray. And it's all hard work, The work that we're doing now of learning and forcing ourselves to grow and challenging ourselves, and the work we're doing at home to discipline ourselves to pray. And to introduce that routine into first our own lives and then into the family life and into the children's life. So the husband who prays very easily, the children will pray. The wife who prays very easily, the children will pray. The family that prays, that's even the greatest, I think, the best scenario. People pray together. But we need to do the hard work. Both things are important. I don't know if the father is. What if you and your husband disagree on who your kids should hang out with? Kids are so young, and the kids don't look at religion now and things like adults do. Pass this on to you. Yeah, so I mean, if this were me and my wife, I'm just trying to think how we would deal with it. I think there needs to be an open discussion as to why there's a difference in standard of level of the kids that you'd like your kids to play with. So what is it about it that bothers you? I think it's an open dialogue that you need to come to a consensus on. And if it's a matter of, So you're the priority of faith. So we're not going to compromise on faith. If this child has been known to do something that is that we don't want our kid to learn from, then that's a good reason to decline. So I would just establish a criteria. So here's what we're looking for: 1, 2, 3, and agree on the criteria, and then just evaluate the friends as it comes. Not very practical. Maybe the fathers want to add to that.
Abouna's really is more experienced in priesthood, so I'll take it. No, again, ask yourself the question: why does this happen? If we are unified, and going back to the unification of oneself with others, with himself or herself, and with God, if you are truly unified in a lot of things, you'll find that there's a lot of decisions that become natural. Why are we here? We care about our salvation. Why do we care about our salvation? Because we want to go to heaven. With our kids, what's the purpose of the kids' life? Is to go to God and to get closer to heaven and bring as many people with them. All of a sudden, once you have that purpose-driven life, you know what your purpose is. Your kids will know what your purpose is. Everybody will know your purpose. Then there shouldn't be that many disagreements about, this and that. But be watchful. That's what I keep on saying. Like with marriage, be watchful. Your marriage, our marriage, is a gift from God, and we have to take it seriously. That before, there are a lot of issues that we're talking about now that maybe 10, 15 years was just given. We don't even need to discuss. But the world has gotten very creative on attacking marriage. Specifically marriage. Specifically parenting. Specifically intimacy. The devil knows, if I break this unity, I can break the whole church. Why? Because the unity of marriage is the smallest unity of a church. If the husband and the wife don't pray, why would they even go to church and pray? If there is that unified church at home, then the church, the big church, becomes very strong. If there is no church at home, if we don't pray together, if we don't read the Bible together, if we don't fast together, then all the things that we're doing outside of the church just becomes almost like, okay, we'll just go to church once a week. Our spiritual life goes beyond just going to church. So the devil has become creative. I will just attack the unity of the marriage. So be watchful. If something's going to affect our kids and take them away from that purpose-driven life, then no.
I have a follow-up on this question. If the parents are in agreement regarding this issue of other kids, however, the other kids are not at school, the other kids are at church, that becomes the challenge. I think the question about how to unify the mother and the father regarding making that decision, who is going to play with the child and so forth, but say they are unified in that, but the challenge is the child that they are unified in, about, or whatever, is not someone from the world, it's someone in the church. That is the challenge. And how do you deal with that?
Are you saying the challenge then that their kids don't have the time or cannot meet with this other child?
No, there is another child in church, in Sunday school, who would bring negative influence on your child.
The same thing applies. Whether a child in church that has a negative impact on a child.
No, I get it, but how do you deal with it? They are unified, and we need means to deal with that situation.
Oh no, it's very clear. If they're unified as parents, that this is negatively going to affect their child, then you tell them, do not allow your child to intermingle with people that are negatively affecting your spiritual life or your kid's spiritual life, regardless where they are.
I understand. It's easier if they're not in church. But when you get in the situation where this child or these children are in church, and their parents allow them to do certain things that you don't allow your kids to do, and then you get yourself, what about Kyrillos? I'm not going to say Jean Doe, but Kyrillos, Muhammad, you know what I'm saying?
Again, my advice, my humble opinion is that if you're watchful, and you have the unified church at home, it does not matter if the influence is coming from a Kyrillos or coming from Joe or Bob, it doesn't matter. The influence, you are holding that church in unified front. And your kids are smart enough to pick up on that too. If you're praying together and reading the Bible together and fasting together, anything that's different from that routine, they'll pick up on it. Even if it's in the church. And they'll tell you. So as a parent, you say, no, that's not acceptable, even if it's in the church. Sorry.
No, the kids are missing you. I've had a couple of servants come in and go like this. We'll have another session of Q&A, and definitely we can answer those many. I have a few questions that I wanted to answer that are there, haven't answered them yet. We will, God willing, in our next session.
We'll just stand up and have a quick prayer, and then give us just 5-10 minutes to reassemble the church and start Vespers, but please go to your children, because I think they're really in need of you.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. O King of peace, grant us your peace. Establish for us your peace. Forgive us our sins. Yours is the power, the glory, the blessing, and the majesty forever and ever. Amen. Make us, O Lord, worthy to pray thankfully. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory forever.
Now the love of God the Father, grace of His only begotten Son, our Lord, and Savior Jesus Christ, the peace and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit, be with you all. Go in peace. May the peace of the Lord be with you.
Sorry, did I get in the way? No.
Good question. I think. Sorry, buddy. No, you put all this way.
Give them back to their mom. Yes. them and you're just stay with the rest.
90%. But it's the kid part that has to understand.
I know, we have such good
I think at the beginning, you said strength. And this is a power that you play, that you play. So it's confusing. I'm sure it's more time to explain. And how we can look at you, it might be right. And sometimes it's straight. It's at a curfew. It's at 11. What's right? What's wrong? Am I wrong? As a parent, this is what it's like. Your mirrors have to convince them that you're smart. Negotiation, compromise, and all of that. It's an art. Everything is, even though a lot of times we're trying to set it down, which is good, it helps us.
The third production, then it's 100% never room for anyone.
No. Because we don't want you to fall asleep.
No, we're not falling asleep, we're very much engaged.
Have mercy on us, O God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Trinity.